Good evening and welcome to The Late Debate. Tonight we're featuring the new Westminster double act that seems set to replace both Punch and Judy, not to mention Morecambe and Wise, the Emily and Boris show. They might manage a smile when they're together, but Emily Thornberry has assumed the role of Labour's chief Boris baiter. Only this week in the Commons, the shadow Foreign Secretary was trading insults with her opposite number over Brexit.
Apart from his own fading ambitions, what exactly does the Foreign Secretary believe in?
The previous day, Labour's Foreign Affairs attack dog challenged Boris Johnson over the government's relationship with President Trump.
He told us that his strategy of hugging the President close, inviting him to meet the Queen, holding his hand when needs be, he told us that that was the way to wield influence. Well, one of us got it wrong, and one of us was being naive.
At Labour's conference in Brighton last month, she again had the Foreign Secretary in her sights.
I know that Boris doesn't like paternity tests, but maybe we need one for Brexit. Maybe we should take him into a studio with Jeremy Kyle. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. We got the results back, and it looks like this one's one of yours. It must have been that wild night out you had with Michael Gove.
That sort of sentiment would not be tolerated in the Commons, where barbs are permitted, but first-name familiarity certainly isn't.
But it would be a start if our flip-flopping Foreign Secretary could stop fighting with himself. Which is it? I haven't asked the question yet, Boris.
Honourable lady shouldn't refer to the Foreign Secretary by his first name. It's rather vulgar.
Apologise, Miss. I do apologise.
Not the name, merely the mention of it. It's unseemly. And insufficiently reverential. Foreign Secretary.
Well, we'll try to follow that tonight. I'm joined by Emily Thornberry, the Islington South and Finsbury MP, who, as we saw, is also Boris Johnson's opposite number in her role as the shadow Foreign Secretary. Emily Thornberry, welcome to the studio tonight. First of all, Jeremy Corbyn in his conference speech said personal and nasty attacks shouldn't be permitted. They were too abusive. Do you overstep the mark a bit with Boris Johnson?
It's difficult. I have to say he's very provoking, and it's quite difficult not to have a go at him. He opens himself up to it all the time, and I don't think...
Is that an excuse?
I don't think he has credibility, and I think that he has this way of getting away with things by just sort of blathering and so on. And so you need to hold him to account. You need to say, Boris, you said this, and then you said this. Which of it is it? You know, and that's fine. I think that's fine. I don't, you know. And a joke at conference is a joke at conference.
Jeremy Corbyn's were nasty and personal abuse. There can never be any excuse for any abuse of anybody. Are you abusing him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I give as good as I get.
Does he give back to you?
Well, yes, I think so.
What's he actually like to deal with on the other side of the dispatch box?
I mean, he's very charming and he's fun. I think that he might be a bit more thin-skinned than I realised to begin with. But I think the truth is that he's not really interested in the Foreign Office. I'm sorry, but I don't think he is. I don't think he masters his brief. I don't think he knows the detail. I think that he's just got his sights set on number 10. It used to be that you'd audition for the place of Prime Minister or leader of a party by doing your job well, the job that you'd got well. He's not doing that. He's spending all his time, as far as I'm concerned, stirring and trying to position himself for being the next leader of the Tory
You talk
party.
about his personal ambition. You're opposite him in the same brief. You've also been talked about as a possible leader of your party, the first full-time woman to lead the Labour Party. Is it something you're up for?
I'm really up for a change of government and for Jeremy to be Prime Minister. And if I can have a change of job, and if Jeremy will give me the honour of being the Foreign Secretary, that would be fantastic. And I really think that we could make a difference in terms of Britain standing in the world by having a different approach on foreign policy.
Do you rule yourself out from being Labour leader one day?
I'm honestly want to be the Foreign Secretary, and you know that is what I'm looking at, and I'm working really hard at it, and I really hope that at some stage in the near future I will have the great honour of being Foreign Secretary.
When some of your shadow cabinet colleagues and ministers abandoned Jeremy Corbyn before the general election, apparently staging a coup, you stayed put. You must feel vindicated.
Well, it isn't quite like that. I mean, I didn't support Jeremy when he first stood for leader. I supported Yvette Cooper. But when the party had overwhelmingly selected him as their leader, it does seem to me that the party is owned by the membership, and the membership were clear about who they wanted to have for leader, and it wasn't the job of the MPs to decide that they wanted somebody else. They weren't even sure who it was that they wanted anyway. And I just thought it was wrong. I thought that a divided party doesn't get elected, and I thought it was my job to make Jeremy the best leader he could possibly be. And I get on with him, and I trust him, and, you know, we work well together. So I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to be disloyal.
What more does he need to do to bring back on board those colleagues who are still suspicious of him?
I don't think that I think in the end, you know, what we all want, everybody in the Labour Party, we all accept that the Labour Party without power is nothing. We need to be elected, we need to be the government in order to change the direction of the country. And the problem with a lot of my friends who didn't agree with Jeremy being leader was that they felt that he wasn't electable. Now, after the last general election, he's proved them wrong. And many of them have shown great character and have swallowed their pride and said, OK, I was wrong, I support you. And there are very few left who are now still cynical about Jeremy, actually. And I think that's great, because in the end, what united us was our manifesto. It is the ideas that we have as a party, where we want to go. There's very little dispute in the party about the direction of the party in terms of its politics. It was just this issue about Jeremy is different. His approach is different. His approach isn't like mine. You know, he has a different approach, he has a different persona, and people weren't used to it. But the public like it. The party likes it. You know, we need to get behind him.
Let's talk about Brexit. Sadiq Khan last week in a speech to the CBI said London needs to stay in the single market. That is not Labour Party policy. Do you think the Labour Party will come round to his way of thinking?
The Labour Party's position is that we don't sweep anything off the table. What we would do is we would negotiate in good faith. We would not go into meetings with our European friends and say, we have a whole load of red lines here and we are not going to cross this and that, because you box yourself in. A negotiation's a negotiation.
But you're committed to leaving the EU.
What we have always said is that, first of all, we campaigned to remain in the EU, but the public said that we were to leave. And we take our instructions from the public, so we will not be getting in the way of that. We will be leaving the European Union. The next question is, how do you do it? And what's your continuing relationship with Europe? And again, we've always said our priority is jobs, is the economy. You don't do things that undermine the economy. So what we need to have is we need to have a British-style deal with the European Union, not a Norwegian one or anything else, because, you know, we are Britain, we are a very large economy, we are an important player. We need to have our own deal, and we need to have one that puts jobs first.
What if there is no deal? What's Labour's plan?
We're not going to accept no deal. We're just not going to accept it. We have got from
But if there is no deal negotiated by this government, and you later become the government, you're going to have to come up with some plan.
OK, so the way it's going to work is that they have to do, so we've got this divorce proceedings going on at the moment, the Article 50, and that's time limited. And we have got the government to accept that we need to have a meaningful vote in the House of Commons. So that means not one at like 5 minutes to 12. We need to have it sufficiently long in advance of us leaving the European Union that we can vote and approve the deal. If they come back with nothing and they say, no deal, we're sailing off into the mid-Atlantic, we will not accept that.
Will you then push for another referendum?
No, we will vote against it, and we will say, go back and get yourself a deal and stop messing around. That's what we will say.
But if they're not listening to you?
No, they'll have to, because we will win that vote. We'll win that vote, and they will be in all kinds of trouble. No, it will not be too late. You know, we are being perfectly clear with them. We're warning them. You know, you look after the economy. We've put down our 6 tests. If you come back with a bit of nonsense, you know, of no deal, we will vote against it. You will be defeated. You know, be warned.
Are you worried about the signs at the moment? Angela Merkel only today suggested that things are not as bleak as have been painted.
Well, I hope she's right. I genuinely hope it's right, because, you know, this transcends party politics. This is about the future of our country. We have to have a continuing relationship with Europe. If we have no deal, you know, anybody who exports anything to Europe will have to pay tariffs, will have to go through a whole mass of red tape, we'll have a massive great lorry park in Dover where all the items are being gone through for point of origin and all this sort of thing. Our economy will seize up. Who knows what will happen in Ireland? People will start having to pay roving. I mean, I could go on and I won't. But there are so many things that will go wrong with no deal, and we cannot have that. And they are talking in terms of that is a distinct possibility, and the government are considering no deal, and they claim they've got contingency plans. That scares me. We have got to stop them.
Emily Thornberry, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us this evening. Now, next Monday, motorists in central London face the biggest road pricing revolution since Ken Livingstone introduced the congestion charge more than 14 years ago. Drivers of the dirtiest diesels will be hit with Sadiq Khan's £10 toxicity charge. But the Mayor's mission to clean up the capital's air doesn't stop at road traffic. He wants to stamp out wood-burning stoves, as well as high-polluting diggers and bulldozers. And he's even got London's canal narrowboat community in his sights. It's one way to escape the rat race. Canal life can seem like an idyllic existence in a busy capital city, about as close to nature as you can get in the urban jungle. But these floating homes are powered by diesel and heated by solid fuel, and that makes them a target for the Mayor's clean air crusade. Sadiq Khan wants greater powers to tackle pollution on London's canal network. For boat dwellers like trainee barrister Gerard Pitt, the idea of being forced to buy a greener engine and stove fills him with alarm.
You couldn't use a canal boat in the winter without a wood-burning stove. I mean, it would set me back hundreds of pounds to install a different stove, and I don't even know what kind of stove it is that would satisfy Sadiq Khan. Let alone an engine. I mean, engines would be thousands of pounds. A great number of boaters who simply wouldn't be able to afford it.
There are an estimated 4,000 canal boat homes in London. The body responsible for the waterways accepts there is a pollution problem.
Air pollution is an issue in London, and we'd like to play our part in that. But we do think canal boats make a very small contribution comparative to other forms of pollutants, and indeed to larger craft, freight barges, for example, using the Thames.
City Hall has floated the idea of emissions charges for the dirtiest marine diesels. Commercial boats already face tougher regulations than private vessels, but one operator worries about the cost to taxpayers of bringing everyone on the water into line.
There does need to be more control, certainly of pollution on the canals. The big problem, of course, is you bring in more regulations. There needs to be an enforcement of the regulations, which requires funding. It's a question of where that funding will come from.
For now, Sadiq Khan's canal ambitions are just that. Before he can tackle boat pollution, he must first persuade ministers to give him new powers. Joining me now to examine how we should tackle pollution in London are the Labour MP for Kensington, Emma Dent-Coad, for the Conservatives, former Transport Minister and Wimbledon MP Stephen Hammond, and for the Green Party, former London mayoral candidate and member of the House of Lords, Baroness Jenny Jones. Welcome all of you. Jenny, first of all, you're an occasional canal boat dweller. What do you think of the Mayor's plans?
Well, I think there is a problem with canal boats because they are mostly diesel, red diesel, and very polluting.
Is yours dirty and polluting?
Yeah, we don't use it very much, so I suppose you can say it's quite clean at the moment. But there are bigger problems. So in a way, this is a little bit of window dressing, I think, on Sadiq Khan's part, because traffic is the biggest cause of air pollution in London, and you have to fix that. The T-charge will help, but it won't fix it completely. And after that, of course, it's buildings, combustible plant, boilers and so on.
Stephen, you're a former Transport Minister. What do you think of the T-charge on top of the congestion charge?
Well, I think that the Mayor is right to look at air quality in London. The only problem, of course, is that his own assessment of the T-charge was this was going to have negligible benefit to air quality. And I think the issue for the Mayor is to, as Jenny says, stop window dressing and actually think about real policies. And one of the issues, of course, is going to hit some of the poorest in our society. And I think he's going to have to answer that question as well.
Isn't that a problem, Emma?
Absolutely, and also small to medium-sized businesses who are running diesel vans, they're also going to be affected. But I'm more concerned about, for example, if you look at the routes of the pollution maps of London, we have the Westway, which is lorries and so on, and we also have the railway. It goes right through the northern part of my constituency, and the railway, the Paddington to Cardiff railway, is as polluting as the Westway, and that's. But
they are spending 3.6 billion, aren't they, electrifying that line?
Not anymore.
No, they are electrifying. We are electrifying the Great West.
It's filthy.
Line, yes, so that's absolutely right. That is the one line that is going ahead, and rightly so. And there are other plans, but not as fast. There is plans also, of course, for electrification elsewhere in the country.
So can I just be clear with you two? I mean, Jenny's made it clear. On the T charge, do you think Sadiq's right or wrong?
I do think he's right, but I think we have to also think about people who can't afford it. I don't know how we do that, but there has to be. You know, not everybody can afford to just replace their car. Surely there are other ways of doing that as well. And are we just looking at low-hanging fruit, which I think is what Jenny was saying? Let's look at the bigger issues, and the trains is a huge one. You know, the electrification of the railway has been put back for years, and I think that's a huge shame. It ploughs right through our residential areas.
You're absolutely right. It has been put back for years. Under the Labour government of 13 years, they electrified 9 miles of railway. Already under the Conservatives, you've done 10 times that, and more, at least 1,000 times that.
But Emma makes a good point. In that particular corridor through urban West London, there are still an awful lot of diesel trains, and the freight trains are all diesel trains.
I'm saying that the government is electrifying the Great Western, so that she should be jumping for joy and yet again congratulating the Conservative government for doing so. And this is good. This is good news. In terms of the T charge, the real problem, of course, is we all know this is a mayor who's not delivering for London. He's a showman. And the fact of the matter is that his own assessment says this is going to be negligible for air quality, and he needs to prove how this is actually going to improve air quality.
Boris Johnson, in his speech to the Conservative conference, accused Sadiq Khan of banning everything, banning cars, lorries, garden bridges.
We know that Boris is not the most reliable source of facts about anything in London, really. But, you know, we've got to look at every single option. It's not just about the trains or even the traffic. It's about changing the way that we run our city. We have to reduce traffic. There is no choice. We have to, and it's not only about taking dirty cars off the road, it's about taking a bunch of cars off the road, clean or not, because a clean car still causes congestion, it still kills and injures people. We have to rethink our city.
Stephen, Sadiq Khan's bringing in, or proposing to bring in, the ultra-low emissions zone on top of the T-charge in 2019. He needs the government to bankroll a diesel scrappage scheme to make that work. Will the government come up with the money?
The two problems, first of all, of course, is that Sadiq was told during the mayoral election campaign, time after time, that his pay freeze, his freeze on fares, which actually hasn't happened to everybody anyway, was going to cost TfL investment. So we've seen, going back to Jenny's point, investment in trains and tubes being delayed. And the reason why he's bringing this charge in a year early, which is going to, as you know, all the emergency services are screaming about, is because he needs money. The mayor is basically failing yet again for London. He's brought this charge in, he's bringing this charge in a year early because he actually told fibs to people at the mayoral election.
Stephen, can we just pause there for a moment, because I want to take a look at the issue that Theresa May in her party conference speech said she would dedicate her premiership to fixing. No, that's not Brexit, but solving the country's housing crisis. Music to your ears, Emma?
Oh, well, if we really broke that down, I think there's about 5 houses per constituency, somebody told me. So, you know, it's not going to create any miraculous boom in housing. What we need, actually, is a complete review of the way that house building is funded. When developers come into Kensington, as an example, if they're working with the council in partnership on their land, they take 20% profit, 20%. If councils were allowed to build themselves social housing and even other housing, who knows, intermediate housing, and they could just not pay that profit would go into producing more houses or better houses, because some of the new houses are very, very poor quality.
Stephen, the Prime Minister's got an awful lot on her plate, not Brexit, not to mention rebellious backbenchers in Cabinet. Has she got time to focus on housing?
Of course she has, and she's also got a very good housing minister and a very good team. And the point about that announcement, of course, was it was £2 billion. But of course it's working with housing associations, and for every pound the government puts in, housing associations will put in 6. So actually it was a £12 billion announcement. The other problem, of course, in London is yet again the mayor's failing to deliver. In Boris's last year we started 25% more houses than we did in Sadiq's first year. And yet again we are seeing the London mayor failing to deliver. The London Land Commission, which could have bringing in all this redundant public sector land, has gone to sleep. Where is it?
Jenny, you spent 8 years scrutinising Boris Johnson's record when you were a member of the London Assembly. Is Stephen right that Boris Johnson built more houses than Sadiq Khan appears to be building?
Well, houses were built. I'm not quite sure if Boris can take all the credit. One of the big problems we've got in London, of course, is the issue of land banking. And if we had a policy of land value taxation, that would remove that at a stroke, and developers would not have, and absent landlords would not have any advantage in not selling land and developing land. That's a big problem. I was going to make the link with the canal boats, actually. The reason we've got so many canal boats, there's huge pressure on the canals, is because housing is so expensive. So these things all interlinked, and you have to look at London as a complete entity and not just pick and choose little bits of it to fix.
Is there a magic bullet to the housing problem, apart from just simply say build more?
Well, the government should give councils the money to start building.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely ludicrous. The government keeps taking money away from councils and putting more burdens on them. So, for example, they've actually thrown the issue of air pollution onto councils. They've asked them to create clean air zones, which will render councils liable to the EU for fines if they don't do it. So I think the government's got to take more responsibility.
Of course, one of the biggest issues in housing that has arisen this year is, as a result of Grenfell Tower, social housing. Emma, you know that all too well, having been elected for that part of London and having been on Kensington and Chelsea Council. Today we heard that so far just 14 families have been moved into permanent homes. You were in the Commons to hear that today. Emma, you obviously think that's not enough and the government's not moving fast enough.
No, it's not. I mean, I've heard these numbers being bandied about in the chamber, and then I go out and meet people, and they're desperate for their homes. They're not thinking, "Oh, and I'll go at my own pace." They want a home tomorrow. They want somewhere. They want something like they had before, because the flats in Grenfell Tower were very decent spaces. There were Park and Old Standard. They were, you know, Park and Morris. They were large and spacious with fabulous views. They want something of a similar quality. They don't want exactly the same, and they want something like that in a neighbourhood. They don't want to be stuck in a brand new modern development which isn't a neighbourhood, like at Kensington Road. A lot of people don't like that.
Stephen, is the government's response so far too slow, inexcusable?
Well, it was, I think everybody would accept, and even the Prime Minister made that point, that it was slow at the very beginning of it. That's certainly not true now. And actually, the government is working very hard to rehouse those people. And I think it's absolutely a key priority. And the key issue has to be, because housing, you can't say, oh, look, here's a house, go and live in it. People have got to make sure they want to be able to live in those houses. And that was the point, actually, to be fair, both the Labour front bench accepted when the Secretary of State made that point in the House today. And I think it's, very clear we've got to make sure that people have houses they want to live in. And also, some of them, of course, it is a tragedy. And for some of them are still heavily affected, understandably, by the trauma.
So how many of the survivors have you met, Stephen? That's not what they're telling me. And some of them I knew beforehand. They're my neighbours.
Emma, Stephen, Jenny, I'm afraid, as always, we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all my guests, to Emily, to Emma, Stephen and Jenny. We'll be back next month, just before the budget. Until then, good night and thank you for watching.